Hi, I'm going to go over my field hours and my research question for my project. Difficulties in teaching science was my research question, and I'm going to begin by telling you where I did my observations and my field hours. I did my hours at Cedar Grove Elementary School. This school is part of the Charter Oak Unified School District. The reason I chose this school was because my son just started kindergarten and he attends this school. Some of the teachers I interviewed were Mrs. Sampiello, who was a kindergarten teacher, Miss Somerville, who's a 6th grade teacher, and Mr. Fox, who's a high school teacher. And part of the reason I interviewed him was because he was really interesting and engaging. I remember a lot of his class. He was really successful in teaching science. He'd always open up class by the fact of the day, which always got you thinking and excited to learn. I did do most of my hours in Miss Somerville's classroom, and she's a 6th grade teacher in an elementary school, which is one teacher for all the subjects, which is quite different for different 6th graders. Some of them go to middle schools and they have different subjects with different teachers. And here's Miss Somerville, and she's actually from Minnesota. She has 2 boys, and she's been teaching for about 10 years. She came from Minnesota because of her husband's job, and she had been talking to me about the difference in teaching styles and how in Minnesota they'd have a lot of specialists or different teachers come in and teach certain subjects, which would give them a break and they'd have time to plan for their next lesson. And the students would get a lot more from different subjects like music and art. And even for PE, they'd have a specialist, she told me. And it reminded me of the Annenberg videos that we'd watch for my visual and performing arts class, and I thought that was just wonderful. But when I think about it here, we don't have that time. We don't have those specialists. So she mentioned that even though there was a bigger pay jump, like it'd be higher, that they pay her higher here than in Minnesota, it seems a lot more stressful and you don't have as much time to prepare lessons and activities for the next day. Sometimes she feels overwhelmed, whereas in Minnesota she didn't. So that's something I kind of can relate to my research question, that it may be difficult for her to teach science. Like out here, unlike over there in Minnesota, they'd have like Einstein kids and everything was more interactive, she said. Whereas here it's just pretty much from the textbook and what you can find and engage the students. So I did get to record her, and here are some of her responses to the questions.
All right. 2 or 3 important characteristics of an effective science teacher. To me, you've got to engage your students. Science is just naturally a hands-on content area. And if the kids have something to touch, to feel, they're going to be more, the experience is going to be more memorable. For effective and engaging students to participate in lessons, especially in science, when it comes to book work, some of the things I do that help the kids stay with us is when we read aloud. The text is good and has a lot of great information from it, but sometimes can sound dry to a 6th grade kid. So we read and we leave openings for kids to fill in, to finish the sentence, or to say they're in charge of any bold words. I don't read the bold words. I pause, they fill it in. Just gets them a chance to follow along. They get to say those important words, so maybe even more likely that they'll actually remember them. Other times, I'll have students be the teachers, and if there's visuals up on the smartboard, and I'll have them, as I'm explaining it from the back of the room, they're using the finger pointer and walking us through the steps. For example, the rock cycle. And we'll say, okay, we're at igneous, and okay, we melt heat and pressure, and that's backwards. And we become metamorphic. Is that possible? That is possible. And So having them be the teachers and having them relay some of the events we just had, that reiteration. Again, the small rewards, I do chance tickets in my room, just a little ticket to win a prize on a Friday. But if kids can reiterate what we just said, oh, who remembers that word? And when I play, like I don't know the answers, and they're always eager to fill it in because I'm playing dumb, and they're filling it in, and they're being smarter than the teacher, and they're teaching each other, making them have ownership and be excited about it, and thinking that they know even more, they remember better than their teacher does. So effective in trying to engage them, trying to get them to participate. Sometimes they'll work as a team, and we'll give points to table groups. They'll have a question and they'll have to come up with the answer, and then rewarding table groups for having the correct answers, because when they get to collaborate, they want to do well. They tend to be competitive, so giving them that competitive edge sometimes when you have questions as well. Establishing and maintaining classroom management. Rules and routines in my classroom. I stick with 4 basic rules that are easy to understand at any age level anyone comes into my room. Number 1, to be respectful. We talk about what that means and who that be respectful to each other and to staff. Keeping hands to ourselves, which includes people, materials, things. Having self-control, and that's a good discussion about what is self-control. Having that knowing I can, but deciding I won't. And then obviously doing your work. So I keep it kind of simple. With group management, when I use groups for experiments, for kids working on a project together, working on even just a worksheet together, they try to give them roles. We have like a manager who's in charge of keeping the group on task and on time. We have a getter, so if there's any materials that need to be gotten for an experiment, for whatever the case, maybe some highlighters or markers for drawing out a diagram, the getter's responsible for that, so there's not 20 kids out of their seats. A writer is responsible for the writing, documenting the ideas. And then, of course, a reader who is in charge of the reading and making sure the group understands it. But having them gives everybody a role, and they all get to be leaders in their own way. And, of course, every lesson, whether it's science or not, that positive reinforcement, reinforcing those good behaviors for kids. If it's something as simple as just a little reward ticket, they can turn in for a prize at the end of the week, a small candy, words of praise, just kind of keeping them on track and keeping moving around. I mean, once you assign work, it's very imperative that a teacher is checking in on each group, not just going back to their desk and grading some papers. That's not going to keep your kids doing what they need to be doing, especially in a 6th grade setting. Best part of teaching 6th grade science, I believe, is 6th grade is Earth Science. We call it our Changing Earth, and what's cool being in Southern California is so many of these science principles are right in our backyards. And we talk about earthquakes, we talk about weathering and erosion. We have the foothills, the San Gabriel Mountains right north of us. And the kids go walking and hiking up there, and they see these things. They see the weathering, they see the erosion. They see the results of these earth changes right in front of us. And that makes it exciting to teach. The kids can find some of these ideas right here, and they bring them in and they share them with the rest of us, and that really makes 6th grade science exciting.
So there are some of her responses. To some of the interview questions we had. Now in her classroom, she did mention reading aloud. So she let me take a picture of the book she read, which gave her the idea to read aloud to her class, and she noticed a big difference in her students. A lot of them seem a lot more interested now and engaged. Sometimes I'd come into her classroom and she'd be reading out of a chapter book right before a science lesson, just to take their mind off and get them engaged in learning, because she teaches science after lunch. And let's see, she had also mentioned to me how from the previous year some of the teachers hadn't gotten a chance to replenish some of the bins, which had a lot of the activities and kits that they'd use for teaching some of the science lessons. Here are the science board, where she has some of the main themes for the year for science in 6th grade. before they're changing Earth. And here are some of the rules that she mentioned. So now overall for my fieldwork, observing and helping out in the classroom was really fun. I did learn a lot, even though in the beginning I had difficulties settling in one classroom. In the beginning, the office manager gave me 3 different teachers that were interested in having me in their class. And when I started doing some hours in there, they none of them really wanted to teach science while I was in there, or they said, "Oh, we don't teach science yet until the end of the year." So Miss Somerville was the only one who was willing to do that. She had actually started teaching science right around the time that I started doing more hours with her. And I feel like I learned a lot. Got to see lots of different teaching strategies. And I did figure out that I preferred the younger students. The older ones have a different attitude towards school and teachers, and also what their bodies are going through. Many of them are probably going through puberty, so they have a different mindset. And I really do enjoy how the little ones seem to be more interested in learning. For my research, a lot of my question was really answered just from doing my hours. My question was, what are the difficulties in teaching science in an elementary school? And a lot of the articles in which I had done my research and placed in my bibliography really tied into my findings. I did learn about the different stages of students, like some GATE students and ESL students, and how that affects their learning of science, and not just science, but all around different subjects. And then also different economic statuses and all that. I did get to see some of that. And to conclude, this was really just a wonderful experience. I found a lot of new things. And I got to see different perspectives, and I felt just a bit more prepared to teach science, and I'm still really enthused. Thank you.